Welcome back to the Modern Hippie Podcast. I am joined today by my dear sister and friend, Chelsae Zirna, who is a Tantra embodiment coach for kings, queens, and couples, and founder of Chrysalis. Thank you so much for joining me today, Chelsae.
Thank you so much for having me. It is amazing being here.
So, a little backstory on how you and I met. We are both in a mastermind, a business mastermind with Elena Ray, who has also been on this podcast. And we sort of dropped in on the first day, and she's like, find someone to hold you accountable. I call that an accountability buddy. And you were like right there on my DMs, like, I think you and I should be, do you have a buddy? And we are just these like beautifully soul aligned people that has just been amazing magic getting to know each other.
I'm so grateful that we ended up connecting. It was almost like it was so divine that we were meeting in this exact moment in both of our journeys. Those like run a really similar cycle. So I'm really excited for the fruits of what this conversation is about to bring.
Gosh, and I have been enjoying so much of what you offer. And you recently did a dark feminine dance workshop online that I got to be a part of. And I think you like really embody such cool things and taught things I wasn't aware of about feminine dance specifically, like really slowing down the motions and about getting into that like touch of self that's very sensual. What got you into learning to dance and embody that dark feminine?
Yeah. Well, it hasn't always been this way, actually. About 6 years ago, I actually could not dance in front of people. I was actually,
Whoa.
yeah, I was actually really scared to dance in public. And I had kind of grown up doing ballet and more of trained choreography dance. So I was really out of my comfort zone. And anytime I would go out in public, I would I wouldn't be embodied. And I would bring a friend along and I'd be like, let's dance together. And it was somewhat awkward. And it wasn't until about 2018 where I was at Mind Valley University and I was exploring the feminine and masculine for the first time. And I was going around and asking everyone in the room, what does it mean for you to be feminine? What does it mean for you to be in your feminine energy? And everybody had different responses. People were like, oh, it means to be intuitive. It's wisdom. It's all of these qualities. And then there was one girl, later became one of my best friends. I didn't know her at the time. She took my hands and she guided me onto this empty dance floor with this DJ playing. And she closed her eyes and she just went wild and just started dancing fully in her body. And I was, oh my gosh, am I supposed to do that? So I just followed her and I was like, all right, this is it. And a few minutes later, we opened our eyes and the whole dance floor was covered in people. And she was like, this is what it means to be in the feminine. The feminine is magnetic. She doesn't care what anyone else thinks. She's deeply in her body. And that's kind of what started my dance journey. And then I later went on to facilitate ecstatic dance. I started a dance community in Atlanta. And then slowly it became more, it started out as wanting to break through judgment, self-judgment around my expression. I always had blocks around self-expression. And then slowly it became more about reaching an edge. Like, how much can I actually express? Like, how deeply can I go into my edge? And that's when the dark feminine really came through. I was like, how much of myself can I bring to every single moment and not actually care what other people think? If it's not exactly what is, accepted socially, can I still show up authentically, like with what's real and alive and what is calling me forward? And so the dark feminine has been a really beautiful practice around dropping people-pleasing tendencies, around like dropping all this good girl archetype and just getting more into like, no, this is the real raw truth of who I am and I'm going to express it.
Yeah, what a beautiful journey. And I'm curious what makes it dark feminine as opposed to just an expression of the feminine? Like, where does that terminology come from? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, the way that I see it, there's this, and they are integrated, right? At the end of the day,
Hmm.
feminine is feminine and it's fluid. But the way that I see it, there's this dark feminine and the light feminine. And the light feminine is more about unconditional love and acceptance and kindness. And it's like the divine mother, nurturing, really sweet, gentle. And that is such a beautiful part of the feminine expression. Like that's what creates so much safety and nourishment. And the dark feminine is more of this like wild woman, like march to the beat of her own drum, a little bit more raw, a little bit more kind of like diving into the mystery, into the unknown, and is almost like a little bit more of this edgy expression, kind of like this. I wouldn't say it's shadowy. It's actually the darkness is more of just expressing more of this raw, wild, call
Hmm.
even energy. So yeah, it's not necessarily, it's not about good and bad. It's more like this dark, real, raw, deep energy.
I appreciate that distinction because I think the darkness is just as important as the light. And they're both beautiful. Like you said, there's not a good or bad. It just simply is more on one side of the scale than on the other. And one of my intentions for 2024 was to liberate my sexuality. And what that, my sexuality is actually honestly quite liberated. But what that meant to me was, I guess, maybe even more sensuality to step away from that good girl archetype, to step away from all the slut shaming I received as a teenager and 20 something, and to begin to like wear the clothes that just make me feel good with a complete disregard for anyone else's opinion. Because that was something like my mom was very judgy of what I wore, or it got to a point where I was like, oh, I can't wear these revealing clothes because then men hit on me really hard and sometimes I can't get out of it. And then I end up in situations that I'm stuck in and giving up parts of my sexuality that I wouldn't really like, but it's easier to do that than to say no faster. And that's part of the unfortunate tale often of the feminine tale. And so I'm at that place where I'm like really ready to embody so much more of that. And I'm curious, where did that begin to switch for you, where you were like, okay, the good girl's going away a bit more. And now I am in like dark feminine mode. She's like an ass kicker. She's like super sexual, sensual, and loving and inviting and all the things.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really, really good point. Like what I heard you say is that there were parts of you, and I resonate with this, that didn't want to be seen, especially by other men, and have your boundaries crossed. And I think the other part of that, even for me, was actually the sisterhood wound. Like, if I'm in my
Mm,
full sexual expression, how are women going to view me? Are women going to be in competition with me? Are they going to feel safe around me? That was a huge part of it for me as well. Like, I don't want to have women feel intimidated by me. I want women to, like, that was always my priority to the point of my detriment.
mm,
Like, it was to the point where I would forego my desires constantly in order to create safety for women. And there
mm,
came a point where, for me, it was like, how can I not dim myself just to create safety for other women and actually empower them in a different way? And that was really liberating. Like, that was a really liberating, just switch of mentality. And also when it came to men, um, yeah, I think that I went on a journey with that as well because I felt pretty um, liberated at a certain point. And then in college, I had my boundaries crossed by a man, and it totally shut off my sexual expression, my sensual expression. I was like, this is no longer safe. This is no longer okay. And it took a few years for me to really come into deeper levels of integrity and safety within myself. And actually, it diving into Tantra and going into boundaries and desires work and learning how to express my needs, learning how to express my desires, sharing my boundaries and having them be respected, and starting to be in a community of people that I felt really safe in, and also having it validated where I shared a boundary and it was fully honored and accepted and loved, and even like thanked, like, thank you for expressing your boundaries. Like, now we have a place where now we have a strong container. And I think the containment piece was really important for me to feel safe enough to be able to liberate my own sexual energy. And that containment was internally and externally. It was like creating containment in with another, like in relationship, meaning creating a really solid agreement around where we're operating in partnership or in a connection with somebody. But then also like my own sexual energy, like learning how to contain and how to actually direct it into places that feel really good, so that it becomes like creative life force energy. That actually was a huge shift for me.
What I'm loving hearing come through in your story is the healing that happens when we get with a group of people or even one other person who begins to look at your authenticity and look at what you do and say, yes, yes, more. And the healing that is allowed to flourish in that space is completely life-changing. It's like karmic healing, it's generational healing, it's like deep inner child, younger teenager. It's all of the ways I think that I can only really speak to the female experience because I'm a female, and female experience is riddled with violation and riddled with boundaries being crossed. And I'm not saying men aren't. I'm sure that I know so many men who have had their boundaries crossed as well and navigate them. But beginning to then find yourself in a space where you can get with someone or a group of people and they say yes. And it's like you build that strength back up, you build that muscle back up, and then it becomes so safe to be your most authentic expression.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, the dance floor was where I started to build that safety. It was like, if I can feel liberated on this dance floor, I can feel liberated in real life. I can feel liberated outside of this dance floor. And I think that the safety with people that you trust and being like, not just even sexual, but like even just sharing your truth. Like, I feel safe to share my truth with you. I feel safe to show my true self to you. I feel safe to take off the masks that keep me safe and keep me protected and keep me all these things, protected essentially. And just say, I don't need to protect myself around you. I trust myself and I trust you to see me as I am and to love me as I am. And I think that's part of the self acceptance journey in a way. A lot of times, especially for me, it's like the judgment is like, oh, I'm going to be rejected if I show up a certain way. So I need to wear this mask to protect myself. And then slowly the masks drop, even in conversation with somebody, like, oh, I can share this with you and it can be received and accepted. And oh, I can express myself fully and you can receive and accept me. Oh, I can be weird and wild and you can receive me and accept me. And then it's like, wow, I can literally just like sit on the floor in full bliss and pleasure and you can receive me and accept me. And I think there's like layers to what that actually means to actually come into full expression.
Mm, absolutely. And then I think it reaches this point where it's like you no longer need anyone to love and accept you in that full expression. It's what I've found for mine as well is like stepping into taking those masks off and having the courage to speak my truth, even when I may feel fear around doing it. So, for instance, when I was a massage therapist and people used to ask me, as I was transitioning out of massage, what is it that you're going into? And I'm like, whew, sometimes I'm in like a mansion with someone who seems very buttoned up, and I'm like, I'm serving psilocybin. to guiding psilocybin ceremonies, and a couple years ago, that was still kind of a taboo topic. And I know people who still think it's a taboo topic. Um, but learning to just say, I'm going to speak my truth, and the way in which I present it is most likely how it's going to be received. And the way that I embody it just give people a chance. I think there's a lot of fear and courage around people accepting us. And when we are truly in our most authentic truth, we're actually even more received with love. And when we're not, those people don't tend to stay, which is something you created, something called the 7 Stages of Consciousness, which is a quiz that I've taken. And it is an incredible embodiment and analysis of the ladder that we climb as we sort of ascend in consciousness. And I think something I'm about to reference is around stage 3, where like your consciousness ascends and you begin to realize that you don't have friends that are like you, and the friends group kind of falls away and you're almost like friendless for a little while. Tell me a little more about that like particular circumstance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because that's actually when, in stage 3, which is what you're referencing, we call it the eager explorer. And that's actually when I started this work and this journey. That's when I started going into this rewilding work and starting to express myself more authentically. And yeah, it's also called the Great Purge because during this stage in the journey, it's like you're purging all of the old identities that no longer resonate. You're removing the expectations from everybody outside of yourself, like family, society, different people that have put these rules and belief systems on you that have almost kept you in a cage. And it's this act of breaking free by purging all of that. And yeah, part of what the purpose of the stage is to answer the question, who am I? And that question has been question asked, for years and years and years by philosophers. And essentially, when you get to the place where you have purged all of this stuff, it's like the limiting beliefs fall away, the masks fall away, the layers of almost like sabotage fall away. What's left is true self. And from that place, it's almost like you go back into your old life in a way, and you're like, these people don't necessarily resonate with me anymore because I'm different. Like, I am now my true self, and I want to interact with people who are very similar. And it almost, yeah, there's boundaries that actually get put on. Like, oh, I can't be around the negativity anymore, the complaining, the blaming, the judgment. Something new is emerging. And it's usually when intuition starts to come through really strongly. If up until this point in the journey it was very logical and very almost like weighing out options constantly, this is the stage of really being in signs and synchronicities and listening to intuition. And it almost becomes so strong that you don't necessarily want to do the things you used to do. You don't want to go to the parties you used to want to go to and hang out with the people you used to want to hang out with. It's more like, I am my true self. What does that actually look like to reorient my entire life to do things I actually want to do, hang out with my soul tribe, and actually live my dharmic purpose, maybe for the first time ever, because that old job, that old thing is just not it. It's not it. And that's the story that I was fed of what success meant. So now what does it mean?
And that story of like, this is what friends are. This is what hanging out means. This is what like time off should look like. And I found myself in that same place where, as I started to change my mindset and my mindset shifted to gratitude and positivity, I was just telling someone last night, one of the most important books I've ever read is The Gratitude Diaries by, I think Janice Kaplan is her name. One of the most important books I've ever read, that top 3 that changed my life, had the greatest impact in changing my life. And then when I found myself amongst friends who would still talk negatively, who we're like, gratitude, what's that? Like, I'm grateful to be alive. And I'm like, yeah, but you kind of got to get more specific than that. And it's more impactful when you're more specific. And the friends trickled away. And I was like, man, I've got these friends of circumstances. Best friend across the hallway because I'm too lazy to go out and I don't have to wear shoes. So, like, cool. But they party all the time. And so then I'm partying all the time. And when I started to tone down the alcohol, realizing what a depressant it was on my system and how negatively it was impacting my health, my mental state, my gut, my weight, like all of it, all of it. Yeah, then finding new friends who could actually show up in a positive way, who could actually say loving, like friends that I didn't fight with. It's like this kind of mind-changing energy. And even now I find myself in this interesting space where I've had this incredible tribe and I've continued to ascend up the levels of consciousness, and they're still sort of, now they're even lower than where I am. And I'm like, oh, I love them so much. And I will always like be around and support them and those things. And they're beautiful humans. And now all these new friends are coming in who help elevate me even higher to this next level. And I think it really becomes something that we seek out, where it's like, oh, I'm so authentic and in the bliss and in the sensuality and running the Tantra and focused on expanding consciousness and helping the world. And it's so beautifully fulfilling to be with others then who can nourish that. Have you found your tribe?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. And I love this topic because the soul family conversation is so important. And the 7 stages of consciousness is really like a spiral. And we can continue going into the spiral and into the spiral and into the spiral. Even in each stage, there's a spiral. So it's almost like this never-ending vortex moving on itself. And in that, in every single stage, we can go through this crumbling of our old life and reforming again. Like we go back into this chrysalis moment, essentially, where we kind of go into the cocoon and rebirth and become new, kind of as we ascend. And that definitely happens. And I think it's natural because everything is energy and vibration. And so as we're shifting our energy and vibration, we start attracting exactly that, and naturally things will fall away. And for me, I don't know if it was ever after stage 3. I don't think it was an intentional, like, okay, this person has to go. It was more like, wow, I'm naturally attracting different people. And somehow this person isn't even showing up in my life anymore. Like we keep trying to meet and we're not meeting, and I'm trusting that it's meant to be. And that's been an interesting journey too, of actually letting go of attachment, because I'm like, wow, there's people that are supposed to be in my life right now, and I'm trusting that. And there's some people who are just not. And it used to really take me down of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose a friend. And now it's more like, I trust. I'm here for this. I'm honoring whoever in my life right now is meant to be. And I went through that recently, actually. For the last 2 years, I had this incredible sisterhood in Tulum. Like the sisterhood I've always wanted. It was like 10 of us. We would hang out almost on a daily basis, doing all these rituals and like get in our dresses and have lingerie parties. And it was so fun. And it was like, literally, we were all like celibate and like for like a full year and just like loving being in sisterhood so much. And then this, past, I would say 6 months, every single one of us got into a relationship. Some people moved to Bali, some people shifted. And the friend group also shifted with that. It was almost like we all kind of shifted our vibration in different ways. And there was this recalibration of the group. And now it's actually a different form. We're not doing these like mushroom lingerie parties. Now it's more like different. Like we're talking about our relationships and we're, doing different things. So yeah, it's been a journey with that, because sisterhood is something that anchors me to my core. It's like, I love it so much. And I'm also recognizing that there's a new phase coming through that's just natural and wants to, yeah, it's kind of like this divine union portal that is starting.
Mm. I like that term, divine union portal.
Mm.
That's a great description, like, because I think we are taught through society to think so linearly. But when you really start to expand and experience energy, it's like everything is spherical. And in that spherical energy, that it is kind of like a vortex. And so, like, who comes into your field? It's almost like another planet rotating. Like, you are the sun, and the friends are rotating around. And sometimes they're closer, and sometimes they're farther away. And sometimes, an asteroid comes by. And so, tell me, what are the 7 stages of consciousness as you've developed them?
Yeah. So 3 years ago, this map came through and I drew it out and I had no idea what it was first. So I just like let it go for a full year. And then I had this Kundalini awakening moment where for like 12 hours I was going on this entire journey and this experience. All this information started pouring through and I just started writing and voice recording. And out came a really, really detailed description of this map in each of the 7 stages. And we've spent now another year dissecting every single stage and actually putting it into a book. So the 7 stages of consciousness is essentially this journey of the caterpillar starting out its life, kind of going through and getting stepped on and squished and not feeling protected, and almost like everything is just bad is happening to it. It just doesn't have a lot of protection and resources, and it's just kind of out there in the world. And this is kind of what happens in humanity. There's all these caterpillars that are out in the world just kind of walking around and fully kind of unprotected from the world in a sense, and just getting squished on, like life is happening to them in every way. And slowly the caterpillar starts to move. So we call that the dark night of the soul phase. It's essentially the phase of everything is happening to me and I'm a victim to circumstance. And every single one of us has victimhood within us. There's so much victimhood in every human, essentially. And we get to choose how much we awaken from that story and move into a more liberated state of true self. And so as we go through, we move into stage 2, which is still this caterpillar state, but it's more of the spikes are up. It's like conflict, spikes. The world is good and bad, right and wrong, and you're learning the rules so that you can protect yourself and figure out what to do. And a lot of times this is where religion and politics are, because it's this good, bad, right, wrong, left, right kind of mentality. And this is useful, but at a certain point, there's another journey that's useful. And this is when the caterpillar starts to feel this call towards the unknown of the chrysalis. So stage 2, we call it the soul searcher, because it's really about asking deep questions of like, what do I actually want in life? And why am I so unhappy? Why do I feel like I'm always protecting myself? What if there's something more? And it's really a self-love journey. It's moving out of this rejection into acceptance. Instead of rejecting what's good and bad and right and wrong, it's like, what if it could be both? And that is the acceptance route, which shoots you into stage 3, into the unknown, into the darkness of the chrysalis. It is this safe cocoon that you're creating, yet it's almost like the unknown. Like, I don't know what's in there. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's on the other side, but intuitively, I'm feeling a pull. And so this is when the metamorphosis process really happens. It's like you go in, you break down all the beliefs, you purge. The caterpillar literally melts inside of the chrysalis, and it's going through this process of transformation, and it's actually becoming this butterfly inside with wings, and eventually it shoots its wings out and emerges. So stage 4 we actually call emergence, because it's actually the stage of being seen. It's the stage of intimacy. It's the stage of I'm removing my mask and showing you my true self. And in that, I'm attracting my tribe and my soul community, aligned partnerships, relationships, and I get to learn how to relate to other people through the mirror. So it's almost like this mirror is held up. And we have this phrase, it's called ashtahe. It means I am you being me. So this whole journey is about recognizing that we are all the same, and I can learn so much about me through you. And actually, the best way that I can learn is actually through you, because everything becomes this beautiful, refined mirror, and I get to look for that distortion. And then in stage, eventually, so much of this happens that the person actually starts to crave, or the butterfly starts to actually crave, almost like, I want to know. It's almost like craving the shadow and the edge. It's almost like I want to know what else is here. If this is my mirror, what else is hiding? And I'm going to go to the edges of the earth to discover what's actually there. And it takes a lot of courage, because this is when the butterfly takes flight. The wings are, it's like the first jump off of the chrysalis. And I know, right?
Such an exciting time.
Totally. And this is when you see people doing plant medicine ceremonies. This is when you start seeing people diving into king and queen work, because they're self-actualizing. Technically, it's the journey where the feminine and the masculine come into divine union. And in order to do that, they have to touch the edges and expand the range of divine feminine masculine expression. So it's like, how much can I touch of my edges, my shadows, the truth of my beingness, to discover who am I to the nth degree? Like, who am I if I were actually becoming source consciousness? And once somebody reaches this place of resting in divine union and actually feeling like, yeah, I've met my higher self, then they reach stage 6, which is called the wisdom keeper. So exactly. And stage 5 is really about sovereignty. Like, I'm taking responsibility for my actions and my emotions. So it's called the empowered leader. But in stage 6, it's actually a level beyond sovereignty. It's this realization that it's not about me. It's actually about we. And so the collective consciousness starts to take place, and actually a recognition that there's a group field and a group nervous system. And you have a responsibility for actually not just regulating your own nervous system, but you can also regulate the nervous system of groups collectively. And so relationship starts to take a different form. Community starts to take a different form. And instead of going out to get and imposing your will onto the world, it's actually about magnetizing in. So the wisdom keeper holds the wisdom, and people come to the wisdom keeper. So it's almost like a very feminine expression. And this is a lot of times where, we were talking about the dark feminine and the dark masculine, which is really stage 5 emerging into stage 6, which is almost like the space of effortless ease and just pleasure as a state of being. It's almost like really anchoring the state of pleasure through breath, through being, and recognizing that everything is a cosmic joke. And in that cosmic joke, how can everything be enjoyable? And so, yeah, it's the deepest state of unconditional love and radical acceptance. Because no matter what happens, you're good. And it's all orchestrated for you because you've designed it as the co-creator of your reality in every way. And not only did you design it, you chose it. So it's really the state of choosing everything and accepting your choices that you've already made. And then we get to stage 7. And stage 7 is called the humble servant. So we end this entire journey deep humility and service. And it's really a state of nothingness and emptiness. Not in like, oh, I feel empty, but like I'm emptying myself so that I can be a channel for wisdom to pour through and be clear of any stories, projections, assumptions, and actually just allow myself to be so present in the I am presence that I'm here. I'm just here. And and so the journey actually ends and begins in stage 7, because then it goes back again to 1 and it goes back around the journey. Stage 7 is really the integration of, can I hold this lens now while being in my dark night of the soul, while going up against conflict, while leaping into the unknown. And it's like we continue going around, but now with a new lens. And so that's why the journey can continue getting wider, deeper and wider. So yeah, that's essentially the 7 stages of consciousness in a nutshell.
What a beautiful description. Like that was very concise and clear to me of what's happening, and such a different ending point in stage 7 than in stage 1 with the caterpillar who's getting walked all over. Life's happening to me. To in the end, like you are choosing everything in that embodiment of unconditional love and becoming the vessel for everything to happen for your greatest good. When you sent me this quiz to take, I took it and found myself being categorized in stage 6, which you found very accurate. You're also in that stage 6, moving into stage 7. And so much of what you're saying right now resonates with where I find myself in that journey, where it's like I touch stage 7 and I hold it, and then something happens, and it's like, oh gosh, now there's this incredible new lens that I'm looking through that I've never looked through to this extent before, with this background of experiential knowledge and um and results that have happened, and experience that things do in fact work out when I remove the fear and remove the constriction. And it's a totally fantastical place to be. And gosh, where do I even go with that? It's a totally. I love also that you really address that it spirals. I've got this like Fibonacci vision
Yeah.
in my head of how the vortex can kind of go back down, and something I've learned a lot about also is spiral dynamics, which is a
Yes.
whole spiraling of consciousness through different colors, and you go up and sometimes you slide back down, and it's a beautiful way of understanding where you're at, and then holding compassion for other people when you realize where they're at in the circle or in the spiral.
Yeah, the compassion piece is super important too, because along this journey, it's so easy to get. In stage 5, something really interesting happens where you become so sovereign that you actually, and so connected to source, that you actually develop a spiritual ego, meaning like,
Mm.
okay, I am the creator. Everybody else around me needs to meet me there and be sovereign. And there's this ego death that happens where the only way to get into stage 6 and to actually initiate your consciousness is by having compassion and unconditional love. And that is the key. And so it's kind of this like interesting journey of uh, kind of moving through masculine and then feminine. Like stages 1, 3, 5, and 7 are masculine, almost like about limitation and aloneness. And stages 2, 4, and 6 are feminine, and they're about being with
Mm.
other. And so it's this interesting balance of going back and forth and expanding into one and then the other to really create this holistic view of consciousness. And technically, stage 7 is the integration. But yeah, I loved where you were going with that in this initiation point between stage 6 and stage 7. There is this moment of emptying yourself, and that is super uncomfortable. And you were mentioning almost going into this expansion and then coming back, going into the expansion and then coming back. And yeah, a big part of it is about expanding the nervous system to hold and using breath, sound, movement, and the embodiment practices that we were talking about at the beginning. And part of it is actually not just about fun and pleasure, but it is about expanding the capacity to hold in the nervous system. And, plant medicine obviously does that. And there's so many things that can do that. But that journey is really interesting because there's the internal world and then the external worlds. And at some point they merge. And so it's almost
Mhm.
like whatever is happening internally is then reflected externally. And so the nervous system becomes so important to be able to regulate to the point where you can hold it because you've reached the state of complete acceptance and complete truth in the cycles to where there is almost this divine perfection in the experience. And that's when everything is in rest, calmness, and stillness. And the presence is actually in the stillness. So, yeah, it's so interesting that you.
Yeah, I've gotten super into gene keys, which is this holographic hologenetic profile based on, it's like astrology on crack is kind of how I describe it, but filled with contemplative wisdom. And my purpose and genius activation ends in stillness as my purpose. So that has been wild because my activations run through, like, my life's work is universal love, and I run through ecstasy and bliss to eventually get to stillness. And it's such a unique pattern, but something I've become really obsessed with. And as you talk about calming the nervous system, my Kundalini awakening has been happening these last 3 months, really. And what's been channeling through me is this humming method that's becoming an important part of my teachings. And the way I'm sort of describing it is like, if you're not humming, all of the other tools that you're using are not nearly as effective as humming to regulate the nervous system. Humming because you can use it anywhere, and you can use it in short form. Like I'll do 5 hums while I'm driving just to be like, okay, I'm getting ready to go walk in somewhere. I'm feeling I just drove across town. I'm going to just take a few quick hums, and like immediately things come down. Like you don't have to sit and go meditate for 10 or 15 minutes. You don't have to do the breath work. You don't and those things are beautiful and they're wonderful tools to implement. And the dance and the sounds and the movements, they're all important tools. um, I have found humming to be this incredible gift that I'm incorporating to be able to hold more. And there was a situation I remember I asked your advice about, which was like, gosh, I'm in this really great place now, and my mom has this birthday coming up, and it's coming up at this like really busy time for me. And, gosh, like Ram Dass said, you think you're enlightened, go hang out with your family for a weekend. And I was like, I just don't want to risk and like bring her into my frequency. The last time I talked to her on the phone, she got my energy so ecstatic, so wound up. I like broke a dish from like washing it too hard, and I never break shit. So like my energy was just firing in all directions. And I asked you what you thought if I should go spend time with my mom, and you said something really wise to me, which was going from stage 6 into stage 7 becomes about holding that frequency regardless of who you're around. And I have held on to that nugget of wisdom, my fellow wisdom keeper, and really noticed that the people I look up to and the people I admire and the people I strive to emulate my energy in similar ways as, they have this divine presence. And someone else I know who's probably at stage 7, I had said to me once, I asked her how she doesn't get so tired with all of these events and things. And she said, I'm pure unconditional love, and I have an endless supply running through me at all times. And so those two nuggets of wisdom combined have really gotten my brain churning around, okay, how can I be so much more in control of my nervous system, so much more in control of my energy, so that it no longer becomes about not hanging out with people who trigger me, because I think that's probably more like stage 3, stage 4, in that growth journey where it's like, okay, these people aren't good for me, I'm going to avoid them. And then we make the new tribe, and then it's like, but you can't really avoid those people at all times. And as you step into that leadership position, you can't just be like, I'm going to pretend these people don't exist in the world. Very impractical. And it's become a very new practice for me to become dedicated to not eliminating people, but allowing everyone in and practicing holding that sovereignty regardless of what someone throws in the direction. Like running the energy, feeling the endless supply.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And actually, your humming tool, I'm so curious about this because I feel like they're directly related. And I noticed that in my own life, I sound a lot. Like when I breathe, I'm just like, and I'm always like making these sounds because it feels good in my body. And it just became a practice for me. I'm curious what your humming sounds like.
So I'm developing sort of 3 stages of humming. There's a beginner practice, which stays really focused on the internal sound om, almost like an AUM, aum, but humming in a tone that feels good for you, like not too low, not too high, not that's going to stress the vocal cords, but like a mm, mm. And maybe that changes based on the day, based on like that one actually started a little low. I find the more I hum, the higher it gets. And it moves into the intermediate practice of actually chanting, humming different frequencies, lower intonation for lower parts of the body and higher intonation for higher parts of the body. So I'll actually bring people into the different mantras for the chakras. So instead of saying for the root chakra is lam. So instead of actually saying lam, it's just a hum the whole time. And allowing for that hum to even, I think it has and science has kind of proven it's got a greater impact as a hum than as a sing, because your lips are closed, because it stimulates more of the nasal palate. It gets to the pituitary gland, it gets to the pineal gland, triggers more nitric oxide to be released in the body. It's like, it's got all of these beautiful, beautiful benefits. And so, yeah, the practice I'm developing is guiding people through getting situated humming, then humming through the chakra points, then in the advanced stages, really learning how to move with the humming and how to target and with intention send the hums into different parts of the body for healing.
Wow, I love that. That's beautiful. And the other thing that you brought up was the gene keys, which I love because I looked at your gene keys and I was like, wow, you have such profound keys. And yeah, I loved looking at your gene keys. And the gene keys actually played a really important role in developing this company, the Chrysalis, because gene key 55 is the key of victimization to freedom or liberation. And this key is the key of that we're in as a species right now, and we're moving through. And it's essentially this like awakening of the caterpillar energy. That's what it feels like to me. It's like we're actually awakening through this key. And the other 2 keys that really play a crucial role is gene key 63 and 64, which are the last gene keys of the entire 64 gene keys. And it's really about illumination and truth. And it's almost like the awakening from doubt to truth through the questioning of inquiry. And this yogic mythology, oh my gosh, methodical path, which is kind of what we created. This 7-stage journey is quite step by step. It's a process. And then there's also the spontaneous awakening that happens in gene key 64, which is this spontaneous, almost like illumination. And that can happen at any time throughout the journey. So it's like we took these 2 and combined them to actually receive what the totality of awakening and truth is, through the yogic, the feminine and the masculine path, essentially, like this more like a yogic methodical path, and then this like spontaneous, like feminine and body, which are both really important actually. Like the stillness and the movement are so crucial to this journey. Yeah, so I wanted to kind of bring that piece in because I imagine that there's some people who meditation is the path, like strict meditation and only meditation and stillness and contemplation. And then there's other people who are like dance and movement and embodiment and Tantra. And this actually brings together the 2 beautifully because it's almost like one strengthens the other, like expanding the range of one expands range of the other. And they're both like really, really crucial to becoming whole. And you could get there going really, really, really deep into one way and really, really deep into the other. But there is also this really balanced way of bringing both together, which is the pathway that I feel the most resonant with.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing those two together. And that, I would say, has been my experience as well, that like bringing in the stillness and the movement, they're both really crucial. Like, get a handle on the mind and get a handle on the body. Like, we operate in this triangle of mind, body, spirit, and literally no one is more important than the other. Like, literally no one is more important than the other. And for the record, I also saw your gene keys, and you have a beautifully profound set of gene keys and pathways as well. And I love that the contemplation that comes in through those, where it's really about getting to learn the wisdom and behind each one. And there's such beautiful nuggets that Richard Rudd channeled through him. And then he drew upon some Buddhist teachings and the I Ching to really create this incredible system that I'm in the process of getting certified to guide as I bring that into my program, because I just think it's so powerful and so impactful that there's this roadmap created for each person that through the limited profiles I've looked at so far, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally see that. And I know what we could work on then because of this and this and how they're planted in the gene keys. And oh, there's something else I was really passionate about saying for a minute there. But the illumination is a beautiful key as well, like bringing in that creativity. Oh, but this is what it was. You were talking about the liberation and freedom that we're starting to go into. And I think what we're experiencing right now is this beautiful healing on the planet. And what people aren't really giving enough credit to the people who have doubts about the future of humanity is that as people heal, when we heal ourselves, we begin to heal up our lineage. We begin to heal the past, and we begin to heal the future, and we begin to heal the people around us. So the more people that are activating this healing, it's like an exponential activation of healing in the planet and in past timelines and in future timelines. And that is a really incredible activation that's happening. And that's what gives me hopes for humanity, for saving humanity, for bringing humanity into this next level of consciousness. Like, we are not doomed. There's just this radical shift happening right now. And it's going to be so fascinating to see what's on the other side of it. But what I'm also hearing from leaders, from CEOs, from millionaires, from billionaires, from people who are reconstructing what it means to run a corporation and things like circular leadership, is that the whole paradigm is changing right now. And the people at the top are working on changing it, and the people at the bottom are working on changing it. And soon, so soon, there's gonna be this flip. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, I really, really resonate with that. It's like there's so many people around the globe right now that are holding this same vision of new currencies, new leadership, new government systems, new ways of living, leading. Even this weekend, in Mexico, there's a huge conference happening called Tribalize, and it's essentially people from all over coming and showcasing the communities that they're building, because there's so many people that are building these living communities and these monetary systems, and they're bringing all their minds together to actually come and create this new earth vision that somehow all of us seem to have such a similar picture of. So it's almost like this vision has been seated in our core, and we're now like bringing this to life. And I actually think a huge way that we're bringing it to life specifically, and maybe even people listening, are through raising consciousness, like the human element. And that piece feels so crucial, because obviously it's very important to actually build the systems and build the actual infrastructures in the world and the government systems and the monetary systems, but I feel like we're really holding down the fort and building the people systems. How do we relate to each other? How can we actually
Mm.
ascend our consciousness? And it's also important for everybody to be doing that work, not just obviously the people that are teaching it, but everyone, so that we can rise together and build from that consciousness.
Mm-hmm. 10 times over. It's all shifting and changing. And what I think is really important about the work that you're doing as well is helping people step into their king, step into their queen, step into the embodiment of this archetype. And so, how would you describe a king? How would you describe a queen? What does it mean to be in that energy?
Beautiful question. Yeah, I'll start with the king because this one, yeah, I'll give my definition of a king. And I also want to preface it by saying there's no right or wrong to this, truly. Like any man can become, you can look at any archetype in the world and become the best version of yourself. And that is what it means to be a king. But for me, there's this beautiful, um, almost like sequence in the world, the king, the warrior, the lover, and the magician becoming the actual archetype of the king. And it feels like men go on this journey of what it actually means to self-actualize in their heart space and become comfortable in their emotions, to express and hold space and really anchor the state of unconditional love, and going on this magician space of actualizing the mind and being able to really think logically and hold wisdom and share that wisdom with other people. And same with the warrior. It's almost like this, it goes from being maybe in the younger years this like aggressive, almost like, really intensely destructive energy, to actually rising into the warrior as the protector of the feminine, the protector of humanity, bringing power and this almost like penetrative force into the world for good and for the healing of humanity. So it feels like the king is this embodiment of these archetypes coming into the space of having deep levels of integrity, meaning really powerful agreements, doing what you say you're going to do, being in integrity with your word, being in integrity with your actions, who you say that you are, and creating really powerful agreements in your discernment of your yes and your no. Like your discernment is clear, you're super in integrity so that you can create trust. And that creates a really powerful, almost like structural integrity where this like impenetrable force comes together. And from that place, it's almost like creating a foundation for other people to be able to stand on. It's like the rock. That's where the rock is created. It's like this beautiful force of nature that just is holding things together. And a lot of times, and leading with love. It's not like everything, the weight of the world is on this king, which sometimes it can feel for men. It's actually about releasing that, and more, it's about coming into integrity in order to create trust, and then showing up with unconditional love and trusting that the people around you are able to rise through your leadership and through the beingness of who you are, and just witnessing you and feeling your presence when you walk into a room. That feels like the essence of the king and this energy. And there's obviously so many expressions of it and so many different pieces, but ultimately, for me at least, when it comes to the feminine and the masculine, it's like the masculine is trust and the feminine is love, like unconditional love. And so the queen version, we can go into the archetypes as well. It's almost like this maiden, mother, wild woman, and then the queen energy. And the maiden is almost like this playful, really like this sensual being who's just like fully embodied and almost like innocent, this beautiful divine innocence, and she's just emanating this frequency. And I think the queen sometimes, it's almost a little bit more serious. So the queen is the embodiment of all of the archetypes. So the maiden is bringing that playfulness and that laughter and that joy frequency to the queen, and her joy frequency is so high. And that's what carries her, and it inspires the people around her. And there's also elements of the mother, like she is the protector. She is nurturing and caring, and she's creating safety for people around her. Like, your heart is safe with mine. Like, when you're in my presence, I got you. Like, you're here. Like, you're part of my clan. Like, you're in my family. Like, you're safe here. And your heart is safe here. And that's my priority, is actually figuring out what creates safety and allowing that. It's kind of like taking care and nurturing. Then there's this wild woman essence that's just like fully in her intuition, fully in her power, in her wild, intuitive, marching to the beat of her own drum expression. And that's coming through in like her purpose and her direction and her leadership. And then we have the queen, who's essentially able to be the expression of sensuality and power and grace, and sit on this beautiful, let's just say, this figurative throne that's not above anybody. It's actually directly everybody. That's the beauty of the queen. She's collaborative. She's in the magic of the experience of life with everybody around her. And she's just, for me, it's almost like so intuitive and listening so deeply that everything is happening through her, which gets more into stage 6. And essentially it's like she's just allowing life to happen through her by being a channel. So yeah, again, the queen can have many different aspects, but ultimately it's like unconditional acceptance and unconditional love, and choosing that in every moment with every single person and being. And so we have both of these aspects in us, and it's actually important to have our inner king and our inner queen together and neutralized, so that we can actually reach divine union internally, and then manifest externally.
Gosh, what exciting work that must be to do with you. And so you have a program getting ready to launch around the time this episode airs. There will be, I believe it's Chrysalis that's launching. Tell me about your program that's launching.
Yes. So this program is actually the Kings and Queens program. So it's going to be, yes, it's really about, we have this masterclass coming up called Sovereign Self. And it's really about anchoring inner sovereignty, really going into stage 5 fully, and really becoming the essence of what that actually means to be the shadow hunter, to go into the edges, to really come into deep states of integrity and unconditional love, and lead with sovereignty, meaning self-governance, inner authority. And then the program is, I'm running it with a dear sister, Amy Ann. And we're going to be bringing men and women through this journey of embodying their inner king and queen together in the same container, which is super powerful, because that's when everything beautiful comes to the surface.
What a powerful container. And so if someone would like to be a part of that program, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you or to apply?
Yeah, I would say follow me on Instagram to start. You can either go to chelsaezirna.com or go to my Instagram at chelsaezirna. And from there, just keep a lookout for the masterclass and join the masterclass. It's going to be getting promoted probably on my Instagram and through my Linktree. So that would be the best place to go.
Perfect. Well, we will have that all linked up in the show notes. And I have just enjoyed this conversation with you so much, diving deeper into all of our favorite things. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for being so curious about going into each of these avenues and the 7 stages of consciousness and the king and the queen work and the embodiment, the dark feminine work. I love talking about this and sharing it, and I'm so grateful to be on this path with you and to be awakening and ascending on this journey.
Me too. I love you so much. All right. See you guys next time.